And now for a review of what's making the headlines in the papers this morning, let's bring in Arise analyst, Dr. Constance Ikoku. Good morning, Constance.
Hey, good morning, Charles. How are we today?
Well, so far, so very good.
Okay, good to hear that. And Yolanda, I love your green.
Oh, thank you very much. Good morning. Looking bright in your red today.
Thank you. You look bright yourself.
Thank you.
Okay, to look at the papers with us today, we have Chuks Akunna. He is the Executive Director of Authority newspaper. Hello there and welcome to the program. We'll begin with this day. In this day today, we have, despite economic challenges, 10 banks granted 65.6 trillion naira loans to customers. Oil and gas, general commerce dominate exposure lending to government and manufacturing sector. The loans were for the year 2024. While this is good news, S&P says that naira depreciation inflated the amount of loans. The average lending rate was at 19.66% in November 2009 and fell to a low of 11.13% in March 2021. All this affected by macroeconomic challenges. Some of the banks ahead in lending are Access, Zenith, GTB, UBA, Fidelity, Stanbic IBTC, FCMB, EcoBank, and Wema Bank. Chuks, bright spots here and there amidst difficult economic conditions in the country. We cannot overemphasize the importance of lending, though, for economic growth to boost consumption. It also leads to financial inclusion as well as generating employment for the country.
Yes, exactly. It's like you said, it's inevitable. There's this saying that he who goes a borrowing goes a soaring, but that's not in business. We know even Africa's richest man, Dangote, as we speak, it's a consortium of banks that actually funding his refinery and several other projects. It's for businesses. Businesses have to borrow. If you do not borrow, you go to raise money in public through public offers, you cannot expand because you can't continue keeping plowing back your profits, to expand. You can do that, but it's going to take a very long time. So that's why banks are there for us to actually borrow from. But there are several economic factors that also determine how these banks and how lenders, fare in an economy like Nigeria. Things are very, very tough. Power, particularly, power and state of infrastructure. Because even when you borrow to produce, moving your goods from point A to point B is usually a very big problem, and that's why some people just go ahead to import from countries like China, where you have cheap labor, and where you have not just cheap labor, where you have facilities, in abundance, like electricity. So, they prefer to import and actually sell here, and that has taken a toll on our capacity of our local industries or those who have borrowed money from banks to produce, sell, make profit, and repay their loans.
Okay, let's move on to Vanguard newspaper. Unity colleges boil over illegal levies, admission racketeering. Parents alleged paying 600,000 naira for admission. This extortion is in federal government colleges, is done by school principals and some teachers. Parents are alleging again, and some parents have petitioned the Minister of Education, Dr. Tunji Alausa. In Lagos, for instance, this report says parents and guardians have laid complaints against particular schools. We have here King's College, Queen's College, Yaba Federal Science and Technical College, Yaba Federal Government College, Ijaniki. Even when students make the admission threshold, parents are saying they are still made to pay some money. And, they are calling for the government to intervene. And I think most parents also hear the story said want their children to go to Lagos Unity colleges, and so that's why the pressure is also very high there. Chuks, again, what a scandal of humongous proportion, and if the Minister of Education and his team are listening, the parents and students want them to do something about this.
Yeah, and I'm sure they're going to do something because I think last week the ministry got a new permanent secretary, a no-nonsense permanent secretary, and the minister is also a very serious person. You can't stop all of this because it's a product of supply and demand. Even private schools, we know how much we pay for private schools, and yet most of the teachers there are not as qualified as they ought to be. We all know that standards in government-owned schools are usually very, very high, no matter what you talk about them. And that's why people are going back to basics. People are going back to these schools. These are schools that produce greats in Nigeria. And but it's not just about unity schools. Even in our federal, in our universities, such racketeerings go on. And it's good that these parents are speaking out and they've petitioned the minister because, we're talking about competence. Imagine a child who makes such grades and you tell him that he cannot be admitted on account of the fact that his parents cannot afford to bribe. It starts, destroying the psyche of the child, long way before he becomes, a full-grown person. And, this will have a very, very negative multiplier effect on our society. And this is exactly what we're preaching against. So I'm sure the Minister of Education and the Permanent Secretary, they're listening to this and they're going to do something about that.
Yeah, okay, let's move on to Daily Trust. Zamfara residents pay millions for safety. This report indicates that the residents have been extorted by armed bandits who demand levies running to hundreds of millions of naira in exchange for protecting them or for them to remain in their homes, actually. These levies are enforced under the threat of abduction, violence, death. Over 500 million naira has been paid by communities since January 2025 to different armed bandit groups. In January alone, Kingpin Isuhu Yellow imposed 172.7 million naira levy on 25 villages, including demands for agri-produce. There's another notorious bandit, Dogo Gide, who demanded 100 million naira for 23 communities. I mean, Charles, I thought we were on the, we're witnessing a downward trend to this type of incidents, but apparently not. And the most shocking is that the names are here for us to see. They're not hidden at all. And the perpetrators are essentially running a parallel government.
Some time back, the former military head of state, late General Sani Abacha, said this, that when insecurity persists for over 24 hours, there is indeed government collusion. And it's appearing as if General Abacha's postulation is actually true. These people, where they are, and then unfortunately they are still running free. Now Zamfara State is becoming a basket case as far as Nigeria's security landscape is concerned. I can sympathize with the security services because that's a vast landmass, and how many soldiers or policemen are you going to use to provide security to the individual communities? Most of them are remote. And of course there's also that theory that because of the gold reserves found there, the insecurity that is being promoted in Zamfara State is deliberate and intentional, so that you create that instability there, and the people, the business concerns are mining the gold. It's something you find in places like the Democratic Republic of Congo as well. It's very, very unfortunate, but of course, the Zamfara State government is absolutely saying nothing about this, because I've not heard anything official concerning the insecurity there. And unfortunately, most unfortunately, it is the people who have to suffer the indignity of paying for security from criminals.
Charles, allow me to come in with just a little remark here. I'm also aware that, some of these bandits are also brandishing the ransom money that they've been taking on social media and even showing their locations as well. So for you to be so brazen, to be able to show your location and to expose the amount of money that you're getting means that they're a law unto themselves. Yeah. They are not being held accountable, and nobody's being held accountable. Nobody is trying to change the narrative of what is going on or to, crack down on this level of insurgency. I wonder what the government, has to say when people are going to be, showing themselves that way.
It looks as though they're provided protection by some very powerful people in high places. It's as simple as that.
Is it protection or is it being sponsored as well? Or
well, either way, protection, sponsorship.
But that said, it's very disturbing. But I spoke with a very senior ranking security official, a few days ago, and he told me that government was on the way to implementing community policing in some of these areas, because that it's very clear that these guys know these criminals. So if they're able to get the confidence, win the confidence of government, that they can actually, come out and speak out, and say this is where these guys are, and they're armed, and some level of control given around the use of these arms and ammunition.
I hope the community police will be armed appropriately, because if you see the sophistication of the weapons these guys carry, community policing, okay, let's see how it goes.
All right, let's see Daily Sun. In Daily Sun, we're going to talk about domestic violence. Here, Governor Oborowori's aide dies, husband in police custody. Mrs. Shimete Bello was special advisor to the Delta State Governor on trade and export. She had an altercation with her husband and was rushed to the hospital, the emergency room, and she died. It wasn't clear whether she died as a result of poisoning or not, but a sad story. Can we talk about how women just stay in dangerous situations instead of walking away, even when they know that it could escalate and they could lose their lives, Yolanda?
I think there are many factors to why women might stay in abusive relationships. We live in a very patriarchal society that is not very forgiving of women leaving their marriages and leaving their homes. So there's so many aspects to look into, but I'd like to think that this is a very sensitive situation at the moment, and this is just one of many cases. It's just that this one is in the public light, and many women, practically die in silence. I believe some years ago you had a prominent gospel artist who also, lost her life at the hands of her spouse, and this just goes to highlight some of the issues in society that are not being paid attention to enough.
Yeah. She worshipped at Dunamis here in Abuja, the woman you're talking about.
I see.
Okay, the Punch newspaper, Tinubu to meet security chiefs over rising killings. He returns from UK or France as well. Presidency blames governors for worsening insecurity, protests in Jos. While blaming governors, the presidency, through the special advisor to the president on policy communication, Daniel Bwala, said governors' poor funding of security outfits, despite receiving security votes, is a problem. He said, and I quote, "What we are finding very sadly is that there are some states where the governors give 20 million naira to the SSS, 20 million naira to the police, 20 million naira to the army as monthly allocation for fighting security, and you hear the security vote is between 1 billion naira, 2 billion, and 3 billion naira. Why is that going?" Okay, so here, he has a valid question, right? On that vague security allocation to state governors. At the same time, is this sufficient to shift the blame from the federal government to the states?
I'll tell us, and I tend to agree with Daniel.
Briefly.
Yes, because I was chief prosecutor in Anambra State, and we had serious insecurity. At the time, Dr. Chris Ngige wasn't in good terms with the federal government, but I tell you, he spent so much money, set up the Anambra Vigilante Services, and for 3 years Ngige was governor. I stand to be corrected. That was one of the most peaceful eras in Anambra State. You can't go home with 1 billion or 2 billion naira every month in the name of security vote and then give out 30 or 40 million to security agencies, because you see, let's face brass tacks. These guys who are human beings, they have family. Should they get killed in the course of trying to secure your state? What do they get in return? That's some of the questions we also have to ask, because they have to be sure that when they die, that there's a backup plan, there's a plan B by state government, that they seek to actually protect.
But there's also another side to it, and that's coming from information from the state governments. They say that, of course, the state governors would usually provide enough money to the security services, but they don't have the authority to issue commands to the security services, or the security services, on the other hand, are not obligated to take instructions from the governors. So it's a central army, it's a central police. They are answerable to the federal government. So even if they get the money, they will choose not to do what the governors ask them to do, or go where the governors ask them to go.
So whose responsibility is the police? Is it the federal government, the state government? So until you have what do you call it, state police, the responsibility is that of the federal government, although you receive security vote. Anyway, quickly, let's look at the Vanguard again. Let's go back to the Vanguard. This story says, rename National Stadium in Lagos after Chukwu, according to stakeholders. Some sports enthusiasts say late Super Eagles captain, who passed at the age of 74, deserves to be honored. Chukwu's former teammate, Kadiri Kana, recalled that the late football legend was the first national captain to leave the AFCON trophy at the National Stadium, Surulere. Football aficionados, Chuks and Charles, very quickly.
No,
the stadium to be named after Chukwu?
I hope they don't start the controversy that trailed the proposal to name INEC headquarters after Humphrey, the late Humphrey Musa. I hope some guys don't come up to say, this guy, he's from a particular part of this country. I mean, why would you name National Stadium after him? It's a problem we have in Nigeria. When we are lifting this trophy, we're all Nigerians. But now that Captain Chukwu, former Captain Chukwu is dead, I pray we don't start, exhuming stories of where he was from, and his creed and his tongue.
All right, to the international headlines, Citizen newspaper, lawyers who steal. Unscrupulous lawyers have plundered their clients' trust fund to the tune of 1.4 billion rand, with more than 500 cases documented, but only 59 convictions were made in 7 years. We do not have time to discuss that, so let's go to a Daily Star, talking about the passing of Pope Francis. Here it says, the People's Pope, with an 8-page special pullout on his passing. We also have this morning, when you go to the Sun, in fact, most papers in the UK, this dominated their headlines. Truly blessed, according to the Sun. We also have Daily Mail, his return to the house of the Father. They also have 10 pages of a special report and analysis on his life. The Guardian this morning, groundbreaking head of Catholic Church, Pope Francis dies at 88. And I like, there's this one, The Times. I like the headline here, which says, outsider with a mission to change the Catholic Church. He died of stroke and heart failure. I'm afraid that we'll have to leave it there. Chuks Akunna, Executive Director of Authority Newspaper, wonderful to have you this morning.
Thank you.
And thanks, Dr. Constance, for efficiently leading today's newspaper review. That's all we have time for here on Daybreak. I'm Charles Eruka. It's goodbye from me.
And I'm Yolanda Robert. Please do keep it here on Arise News. The morning show is next. Goodbye.